Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, everyone had quietly forgotten about the Italian election nearly 3 months ago, unless you're in Italy, until news came that changed everything. The next Italian government may well be formed by a coalition of seemingly opposed, radical, anti-establishment populist parties. The two groups, the Five Star Movement and La Liga, look set to try to govern together. They are poles apart in much of what they stand for, but they share a loathing of how Italy has been run before and claim that they now represent the people's voice. So could it work? The Italian election 2018. It was the gunfight that ended with no clear winner. Those still standing are now left trying to patch together an awkward method of survival. Imagine a coalition between Momentum and UKIP, the alt-left and the firm right. How would that work? How could they possibly govern? The analogy is imperfect, but it's broadly what's about to happen in Italy. The anti-migrant party of the right, La Lega Nord, led by Matteo Salvini, is on the verge of going into coalition with the populist Five Star Movement led by Luigi Di Maio. Five Star has only ever contested 2 elections, but it secured 33% of the votes this time, more than any other party. The coalition of the right, led by La Liga and including 4-time Prime Minister Berlusconi, got 37%, but they fall short of the required 40% needed to win a majority. For weeks, the Five Star leader swore there would be no alliance with what he called the parties that destroyed our country. But now, desperate to try and prove their hand at governing nationally, this option is starting to look like the least worst for them.
Forza Italia!
Last week, Berlusconi himself gave his blessing to the alliance. A ban on him running for office for 5 years has now been lifted. He sees himself not as a player, but as a kingmaker. The incoming coalition is, of course, chalk and cheese, but they share a Euroscepticism and a sympathetic stance toward Russia on sanctions. And as in every horseshoe, the distance between extreme left and right gets narrower and narrower. Perhaps there's more to unite these strange bedfellows than to keep them apart. Well, Valentina Romei is a Financial Times journalist writing mostly about European economies, and Enea Desidere is a research analyst at the Open Europe think tank. Very nice to have you both. Enea, I ended with this idea that actually when you've come and completed the horseshoe, you're not so far apart. Do you think this is a working relationship? Is it workable?
Well, we will see. As it has been shown, the two parties are radically different parties. They have some points in common. They both voice a demand for change that is coming from the people, but they also have, very big differences.
There is a perception here, or more widely, that La Liga is broadly fascist. Is that fair or is that too strong?
I think there is a risk to abuse the term fascism. The Lega is definitely a very extreme party. Some of the views, especially on immigration, are very tough. And there have been some strange, if you want, links between the Lega and some of the actual fascist party that claim to be the, the narrators of the fascist legacy in Italy. But I would say that using the label fascist for Lega is still a bit too strong.
And Valentina, where do you understand now their position on things like the euro, whether they want to get rid of the euro, on things like Russia sanctions, on wiping out the EU debt, which is, of course, huge in Italy now? Do they share a...
Well, that depends on which version of the coalition document you looked at, because there have been 3 different coalition contracts, that's what they call it, and they have been very different about crucial issues. The final one that was released today, it's can be summarized like more spending, basically. More spending because there is spending on a basic income, spending because there is changes to the pension reform that become laxer, and there is spending, most funding for the police forces, and so on and so forth. And on the other hand, you have fewer tax revenues. That's what is expected from the policies that are in the latest document, because there is a freeze for a tax hike that was planned for next year, and because there is the proposal of a flat tax that is not actually planned.
Okay, yes. So the spending comes from this idea of a flat tax. I mean, where do they think they're getting the money from for all this?
Well, the document says that they will get more money from the reduction of waste of public money, but obviously this is a kind of a tricky thing to do.
And in terms of their position on migration or on deporting, I mean, do they share a similar platform there? They want to get rid of hundreds of thousands, right?
Well, the goals to some extent are similar in the sense that they have both pledged to increase the number of repatriations, to speed up the process for asylum requests. The means to achieve this, though, are, I would say, quite substantially different in the sense that Lega is much cruder and much harsher in the approach that it takes. The Five Star Movement is much more attentive, if you want, to humanitarian concerns.
I mean, is Italy prepared for this? Is the EU prepared for this? This is proper populist government in Western Europe, which is sort of, you know, in a major economy,
because we have seen problems before. The European project has been called in doubt before with the Greek election in 2015, but that is a totally different matter. I mean, Italy is the EU fourth largest economy. It accounts for 11% of EU GDP. Solving the Italians' debt problem is a totally different matter than sorting out the Greek debt problem.
So is your sense that the EU itself would be terrified by this, or that these parties will end up changing and reforming the EU?
Well, there is, I believe, some worries, and I think rightly so, in Europe, you know, seeing all this situation and this possible coalition government. There is, alongside the economic, I think, concerns, there is also an argument to be made about Italy being one of the founder six and one of the three largest, you know, like founder six.
Because they could leave the EU now?
Well, I think at the moment, neither leaving the EU altogether nor actually leaving the euro, the common currency, is on the table. But I cannot completely rule out that should the economy turn really bad, you know, in the future, then probably the two parties will, you know, blame the Eurozone architecture for the problems, and then they might, you know, start even calling for, in say, 5-10 years, for, you know, Italy to leave the current.
And Valentina, there's two missing pieces to this now. One is a big character we haven't discussed, Berlusconi. Does he still have an influence in Italian politics? And the other is the missing character, which is they haven't chosen a prime minister.
Yes, they haven't chosen a prime minister, and that, I think, shows how difficult this relationship really is. I mean, it's been weeks, months since the election results, and still we are not there. We have this coalition contract that didn't exist before in Italian politics. So it's a very difficult process, and it might not end up well. I mean, we might not even see a government after all, or a long-lasting government. I think what he mentioned about the fact that the risk of a proposal to exit either the euro and the EU could come back if the economic situation gets worse is an important point, because the economic discontent is very strong in understanding the political situation.
Thank you both. Thank you both very much indeed.
Thanks.